In this session we're going to examine who is responsible for what in coaching. So the objectives for this session are that at the end of it you'll be able to identify where responsibilities lie in the coaching process, evaluate what considerations should be taken into account when setting up the coaching, and analyse the coach's responsibilities for continuous professional development. To start thinking about this, write down your thoughts about why you think being clear about the responsibilities in coaching is important. Well, firstly, it makes sure that both and all parties in the coaching are aware of their part in the agreement, that they are both clear about who is responsible for what. It is also to protect both the coach and the person being coached, and that both are clear about what they and the other person has agreed to, and that this goes on to maintain the integrity and the health of the coach. Sometimes coaches can become so involved in the problems of the client that they start to be affected by them. And this isn't helpful for either person, because in that situation the coach cannot give of their best to the client. So it provides optimal conditions for the growth and learning of both the client and the coach. And lastly, it gives a clear understanding of how the process will work. Let's start by looking at the responsibilities of the coach. As a coach, you're responsible for the process and the mechanics of that process, and you will be there to guide your client through that. So your greatest responsibility as the coach is for the process. You'll also be responsible for helping the person to be clear about what they want to achieve as a result of the coaching, and to help them do that in a really motivating way. And you'll want to help the person identify ways in which they can achieve those goals, and to ask questions to help the client explore what's happening at the moment, and what's working really well and what's not working quite so well. And finally, you will be responsible for contracting with the person and agree terms and conditions, and for sticking to those. Now let's think about the client's responsibility. It is very important to realise that the client is responsible, and only them, for their own change and learning, and that you're not. You are responsible for using your greatest skills and ability to take them through the coaching process to help them change. But whether they change or not is their responsibility. If you don't do this, then not only is it not good for your health, but also it's not good for the client, because coaching is there to help the client to learn to achieve results for themselves. So whether they change or learn is the client's responsibility. And part of doing that is for them to set outcomes and goals with your help through the questions that you ask, but it is still their responsibility to set the outcomes and the goals, to take action based on whatever it is that they have decided would be good, and to contract with the coach and agree terms and conditions, and to adhere to the contract. Knowing who is responsible for what and managing expectations can make a big difference. So what will the client want to know about before the coaching in order for them to feel committed and comfortable with the process? Write down your thoughts. The first one is about confidentiality. We will be discussing this more in the module on organisational implications of coaching. But the idea is usually to have total confidentiality, as this then allows the client to work through and say what they want, knowing that no one else will be privy to the conversation. However, in some situations an organisation or manager may want to have some form of progress report. And it's very important that this is clearly agreed beforehand, and where possible, nothing is reported without the client's full knowledge and approval. There is a correlation between level of confidentiality and levels of change in coaching. So when you are coaching, it's one of the important things to manage and to agree on before the coaching takes place. Linked to this is about whether notes will be taken and who will have access to them, and any reports, and who will have access to what information. People may not have had coaching before, or even if they have, the process of the previous coach may be different from yours. So it's useful to let the client know what normally happens in a coaching session and what are the likely things that they will get from the process. This sets their minds at rest and helps them come to the coaching sessions much more prepared. The client would also want to know how things will be organised, so about the times, the venues, and all those sort of details. And lastly, it may be important to let them know the standards or ethical considerations in the way you carry out the coaching. For example, are there any circumstances in which you would be compelled to break confidentiality? Perhaps if someone told you about a crime they committed. You are, of course, responsible for your own professional development, and this is also covered in more depth in the final module, but your own continuous development is vital to you being able to deliver the best for your client. So making sure that you have the development available to you means that both you and your client will grow and develop more. And you may want to think about how and when you will use your own coach. That will help you make sure you're always operating at your best. And how can you obtain a supervisor? Having a supervisor will help you operate your best, but will also support you in the coaching that you're doing. How will you learn from each of the coaching sessions you give? This is one of the pearls of coaching. Every single session you do is full of learning about how you approach things in just the right way for each of your clients. And it's well worth thinking about how you can get the most from this learning. Do you need to give yourself time to reflect? Do you need to keep a log? What sort of thing will help you learn the most? And lastly is to keep an eye open for any development opportunities that are available. How can you find out about what is available for you?